Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the meeting. And just a reminder that today's meeting is being streamed live, so recorded. The recording will be available on YouTube via the Council's website after the meeting. Ideally, we want to use the chat function for questions and comments. If we're here and there's a problem, I'm just waving at me. Which comes to shove. Just before we get too much formality, I would quite like to just recognise two predecessors. Councillor Bob Band, who's still sorely missed. Councillor Caroline Shires, who in my experience was best and courteous throughout her term. I will be doing well to learn from both of them. For today's meeting, I've been advised of the following substitutions. Councillor Forbes for Councillor Freshwater, Councillor McEwen for Councillor Massey, and Councillor Harvey for Councillor Welsh. Okay, apologies.
Apologies have been received from Mrs. Audrey Macaulay.
Thank you, Linda. I think we need to take a roll call at this point for those attending online.
Good afternoon, councillors. Call out your name. Barrett.
Present, but I could hardly hear that.
Apologies. Councillor Liz Barrett is here. Councillor Crawford Reid.
Present.
And Mrs. Carolyn Weston.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, and welcome again, everybody. Are there any declarations of interest in respect of the business on today's agenda, please? Stick a DI in the chat if you do. I think that means there are none, so we'll move on to item 3, which are the minutes of previous meetings. Can we agree the minute of the Lifelong Learning Committee of the 21st of March 2022? Thank you. Can we note the minute of the meeting of the Executive Subcommittee of the Lifelong Learning Committee of 21st March 2022? Thank you. Can we note the minute of the meeting of the Joint Negotiating Committee of 7th December 2020? Thank you. Then we move on to the main business of today, I think, which is item 4, the Education and Children's Services Joint Business Management and Improvement Plan 2022-23 and Service Annual Performance Report 2021/22, which we'll just call the BMIT from the rest of the afternoon, if that's okay. I invite Executive Director Sheena Devlin to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Convener. I'll keep my introduction brief. This report presents the Education and Children's Services Joint Business Management and Improvement Plan for 22-23 and the Annual Performance Report for 21-22. It provides a broad and balanced view of service performance aimed at improving outcomes for children, young people and families over a year of significant challenge, and it outlines the ambitious improvement agenda for the forthcoming year. There are a number of officers here with me today in the chamber and online also who will be able to answer any questions that any member of the committee may have. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Sheena. Any questions? If you stick a Q in the chat, please. Bailey O'Hearn.
Thank you. I have actually put 4 questions, but I'm happy if you want to come back to me after I've asked the first one. The first question's based on page 41 of the papers, and it's with regards to the priorities for 2022-23. And the third priority down there is to conduct a thematic review of secondary school support for pupils with ASN. What sort of review is this, and what's it going to take part in? Is it set against any set of national standards? And if not, how are you going to evaluate the success previously with regards to any change you want to implement now?
Shan?
Thank you. And Billy Ahern, the Collaborative Improvement Programme, which Perth and Kinross took part in as part of a national programme of improvement, was one of the key themes that is related to this piece of work. And the secondary review of schools with in relation to additional support needs is part of that ongoing work. The theme is based on our ability to understand and know how well inclusive practice is being undertaken within our secondary schools. In a time of significant challenge, it's one of the areas of improvement that we've identified through our school improvement and our self-evaluation processes over a number of years. And our education plan features inclusive practice as a main focus of that work. So one of the ways in which we're looking to undertake that improvement is to work with our secondary school head teachers, our principal teachers of support, and indeed with other colleagues from Education Scotland and indeed from other local authorities in Scotland to look at our inclusive practice within secondary schools. That will include engaging with parents, with staff, with pupils and young people, gathering all of that information together and coming to a collective agreement about what our strengths are and what our areas for improvement are. So it will inform our future planning, but it will also inform our strategic planning within the local authority for what we need to do strategically to support secondary schools in that work. And also each school will get a very good picture of their own strengths and areas for improvement that they can work on through their own school improvement plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Shan. Councillor Liz Barrett, please.
Thank you, convener. I'm looking at page 31 on health and well-being, where I welcome the development of training on suicide prevention and safety planning and the multi-agency work referred to on that page for self-harm guidance on self-harm guidance and good practice needs across schools. I'm just wondering, when will this be rolled out, and will it also be going to primary schools, please?
Shan, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the work on suicide prevention and early intervention is work that's ongoing. As we speak, Councillor Barrett, we've already undertaken a number of sessions with our secondary schools, and we continue to develop guidance alongside practice. So we are looking at a set of guidance which is in fact in development and will be completed for a final draft to discuss with local authority staff, but also with our public health colleagues over the summer. So a number and range of meetings have taken place over recent months, and we're really at the final stages of looking at the guidance that will be shared. So the work is happening. Obviously, we've been very conscious of the summer holiday coming up, and any urgent and immediate work that's required in terms of safety planning has already taken place. And our guidance will go through a final consultation process, and we will look at putting together some sessions for school staff, and that does include primary schools, and we've been in discussion with primary schools already this term, just to take staff through the training that's required in the ongoing discussions about how we put that into practice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shan. Councillor McEwen.
Thanks, convener. The cost of the school day is obviously one of the big aspects of us tackling child poverty. And since a few years ago, when I myself ran a recycle and reuse school uniform event in Blairgowrie that was subsequently taken up by the Climate Cafe, and that's been replicated throughout Perth and Kinross. And I'd seen last week that the social flock in Perth have had 200 applications for support, and I'd encourage you even more applications going forward. So I'm interested to see how our council's managing to engage with these local groups to help support families with the cost of the school day.
For a number of years now, Councillor McEwen, as you have said, lots of different schools have taken varied and different approaches to helping manage the cost of the school day, whether that comes in the guise of the cost of school uniform, the cost of participation in trips or events at the school, the cost of equipment, etc. that's required. All of that can add up and become very, very costly for our families. And so there has been a determined effort on the part of all of our schools to absolutely minimise those costs over a number of years. And that work actually began when we did some partnership working with the Poverty Commission, who came and spoke at one of our head teacher development days some time ago. There are a range of different organisations, Social Flock being one of them, but others as well, who are very, very active across all parts of Perth and Kinross. And Social Flock particularly have really focused on what they're calling pre-loved uniforms, and they take great care in terms of providing at no cost full uniform to children and young people of all ages. And we actively work in partnership with them and support and advertise that service throughout all of our schools. Similarly, a number of parent councils across schools have been organising, uniform, gym kit, and indeed for things like end of term proms, dress sales or gifting on of dresses or formal wear to again reduce costs there. I mentioned in the presentation that I provided previously to the committee that we have benefited from significant funding from Scottish Government to reduce costs for things like music tuition and also for curriculum materials in a range of different subject areas. And a number of schools are very actively involved in minimising the costs of trips and excursions for young people as well. So there is clear partnership working across a range of third sector and voluntary organisations, good networking, I would also suggest, between schools and parent councils and others. And we will continue to do all that we possibly can to ensure that we minimise all of these additional costs. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheena. Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Convener, and if I may just thank you for your kind comments at the start of the meeting, and I certainly intend to fulfil my role in a similar manner to the way that so thank you very much for that. My question is with reference to the comments in the introduction to the BMIP, and it's quite sort of general, and you'll know, Convener, that some of these issues were raised at the JNCT, but it's regarding planning for recovery and particularly how we support our staff. We know that we've got huge issues with ongoing absence of staff and pupils and support staff across schools. So I'm trying to get an understanding about how you plan for recovery whilst upskilling staff in this new virtual world that they need to operate in, with all the new skill set that a lot of people have had to get to grips with, whilst also doing the day job, because we recognise that the school holidays probably can't come soon enough for quite a lot of people. But it's just to get an understanding of how that's been done and what additional resources are perhaps required in order to do it as well as we can. Thank you.
I would like to just say a couple of things, if I may, Councillor Shires, but for more detail, I'll ask Sharon Johnson to come in. But the point that you make around the skilling up of staff, it is one that has been a significant focus for every local authority across all of Scotland and indeed across the UK and indeed nationally, internationally, because we encountered very different ways of working at very short notice. What we do have are a very clear digital strategy to support staff across Perth and Kinross Council, with training in things like Microsoft Teams and understanding just how we can absolutely maximise all of the benefits of that kind of approach. And that's just one aspect of it. But really importantly, away from being council specific, there are considerable implications for initial teacher education establishments. And that has also been taken account of in terms of what changes there may need to be made to the training of people coming into the profession, because they're coming into a different profession in terms of the skills that are absolutely required than perhaps 3-4 years ago. And in terms of the points you raise about the impact of staff absence, you're absolutely right. And I'll ask Sharon to give you some information in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In relation to staff absence, as the Executive Director said, it has been an incredibly challenging 2 years for schools, and the COVID absences have been incredibly challenging for everybody in schools. The additional funding that we received that was mentioned in the introduction, Councillor Shires, was one of the ways in which we were able to mitigate against the staff absences. But we also had a tried and tested process in place prior to COVID, because recruitment and staffing has been sometimes an issue within Perth and Kinross, particularly in rural areas. And so we already had a very good process, which we strengthened during COVID times to ensure that where we were unable to access supply staff or indeed additional staffing that we could put into schools, our approach was always to make sure that we did not have to close a school or send children home because of staff absences. And so we had a process whereby we would use our daily intelligence, and our service managers and our HR teams worked very closely together to make sure that on a daily basis we looked at where the staffing issues were in a school. We looked at what staffing was available nearby, and I would have to say that, you know, staff pulled out all the stops to help each other out. So we moved staff from one place to another. We also used our central funded staff to go into classes on occasions as well. And we're pleased to say that we did not, in fact, need to close any school or indeed any class because of absence. That obviously takes its toll on the mental and pressure on staff to be at work when others were not, and managing to keep the show on the road has been well recognised, and there were a range of wellbeing supports in place for staff during that time. Obviously, staff used each other as a good support, and certainly our head teachers met on a regular weekly basis to share their experiences and supports for each other. There was a good corporate offer in terms of wellbeing and support for that, and our educational psychology team worked incredibly hard to make sure that they were available at all times to ensure that staff had good support when needed. But I would have to say that absolutely everyone's looking forward to the school holidays. Thank you.
The other bit of that question was about the planning for recovery. So there could be some more detail around that.
We have a clear workforce development plan that's been established, and the offer is, if that would be helpful for this committee to see, then I'm sure that we'd be very happy to bring that forward.
Thanks, Sheila. Thank you, Councillor Shires. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, convener. It's a question about the Children's Holiday Activity Club, which I understand was funded to in the region of about £104,000. I'm just wondering if officers can comment on its effectiveness to date. Thank you.
We were very pleased to receive additional funding of £104,000 from the most recent council meeting, Councillor Harvey. That money will be used to extend the offer of holiday activities that will take place during the October, Christmas and Easter holidays. And we're currently utilising the funding that we had from Scottish Government and from the previous administration to ensure that we are running activities during this coming summer holiday. And that programme has been well advertised through a range of means, including social media, but also directly targeted towards particular groups of children and young people and across all parts of Perth and Kinross. So we will provide a summary of the activity that was undertaken during summer. We need to submit that to Scottish Government in due course, and we can make that available through an elected member briefing note. And then we will also be quite happy to outline what the plans are for the forthcoming October, Christmas and Easter break, utilising that additional funding that we were grateful to receive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. How was the take up of, sorry, Mr. Conveners, Mr. Convener, sorry, conveners, as a slight follow-up question. How did you have any trouble with people signing up for this Was there any gaps in it, or was there any problems getting people signed up for the fund? The activity club, sorry. Sorry.
There's a range of different activities. So in different parts of Perth and Kinross, there's a different offer. Some of that will be targeted at different age ranges, and we have things taking place, for example, at Willowgate. We have outdoor activities taking place in a range of parts of Perth and Kinross. We've got swimming activities on offer, and I'm not aware that there's been any hesitancy in anybody signing up for those activities. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Thank you, Sheila. Councillor Kigali, please.
There, is that working? Yeah. At the top of page 15, there's reference to the stubbornness of deprivation-related outcome gaps. Obviously, it's a multifaceted issue, but I was wondering whether that stubbornness has been exacerbated by the slow rollout of the free laptops that were promised to every school child.
I don't think it's possible to conflate the two, Councillor Kigali, no.
Sheila. Councillor Reid, please.
Thank you, Convener. I'm referring to page 9 of the report appendix regarding play-based approaches to teaching and learning in early level primary school. On the assumption that it is hoped to achieve 100% of participation in play-based learning, can I ask why 40% of schools have still to participate, and more importantly, is there anything that this committee can do to facilitate 100% participation?
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Ben, are you able to answer that one, maybe? Yeah.
I can, Councillor Rebick. The statistic is regarding the teachers that have taken part in action research around about play-based learning. So it's not necessarily to say that all schools or a number of other schools aren't also undertaking that approach. And we're relatively confident that they are in some way, shape or form, but that particular statistic is around about a very specific programme that helps teachers to research and look at their own practice and take that forward. And it's something that we do in partnership with the early years team and the educational psychology. And so we are working through as many of the teachers as we think it's appropriate to do, but I wouldn't like you to think that not just because a school hasn't taken part in that it doesn't have play-based approaches. It absolutely does. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. It's just to question whether or not is there anything that we can do to support you in this aim.
Any support is welcome, but I'm confident that we have that covered in terms of our approach that we're taking with our staff and our staff's willingness to take this on board. But thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Reid. Councillor Forbes, please.
Thanks, Convener. My question is multifaceted. It's regarding the virtual campus, and I wondered, first of all, I probably should know the answer to this question, but do all education authorities have a virtual campus, and do we share courses across other Tayside area education authorities?
In relation to virtual campus, one of the big important developments during the last 2.5 years has been the establishment of what's called eScoil, which actually had its genesis in a virtual campus that was developed in the Western Isles to support breadth and choice of subject across a very challenging geography that the Western Isles have. And that eScoil developed further and was supported by ultimately almost all, I think, in fact, probably all local authorities and there are rather a range of courses available at different levels in many, many different subjects that were accessible during the period of the pandemic and beyond to support learning across all schools, across all of Scotland. Similarly, across the Tayside Regional Improvement Collaborative, we have developed a range of specific online courses for a number of advanced hires, and that is being extended further, and that is available to all young people in the senior phase across all secondary schools in Dundee, Angus and in Perth and Kinross.
Yes, of course. I think it was because I had my microphone. Sorry.
Barbara did say this morning this was user error, but I'm absolutely convinced I can press a button. So Sheena, just if I can elaborate on that a wee bit, does that mean therefore that Perth and Kinross teachers could be teaching somebody in Dundee a specific course that they don't perhaps offer in Dundee, just as an example? Is that how that would work?
That's how that would work.
Thanks, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, convener. On page 44 of the document pack, we've got a reference to the widening course choice budget motion funding, and I was just wondering how many extra courses in how many extra schools will pupils be offered come the start of the new session?
David, are you able to answer that one, please?
Yes, I am. So individual secondary schools spent that money in a variety of different ways. But generally, in the first year of that funding, what was done was some work with the Scottish Curriculum Qualifications Framework to look at alternative curricular pathways for young people throughout the senior phase, so that indeed as they moved through levels 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, there was more than one pathway within the school as part of the virtual course, but also as part of our schools college partnership as well, and that any gaps were therefore filled. So a piece of work is undergoing at the moment to look at what option choices are looking different from next year and what the uptake of that is going to be. So we know that the course choice has expanded for next year and will continue to expand as a result of that work. We also know that a number of our schools have now attained ambassador status from the SCQF because of their work in doing that, and we'll be in a position in September to collate exactly what the numbers are around about
that. Sorry, just as a follow-up. So, sorry, how many extra courses? What is the widened subject choice that's been provided?
So it's different school by school because it depends upon what the curricular area or the curricular offer currently is in that school, as well as the curricular demand for that school. So schools have used the funding for a year to basically plan their senior phase offer for the year ahead and then get the uptake round about that. But we're not due to collate the actual number of courses and pupil uptake that looks like in a school by school basis or across PKC until August, September, when we have the kind of final solidified course numbers really.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. We're now on to second, third and fourth questions. So I think with the committee's permission, we'll make this the last call for any further questions. Councillor Hearn, please.
Thank you very much. My second question is based on paragraph 5.3 on page 14, which is the procurement of a performance management software system. Can I ask why the change in the software? What will be radically different to the output? And what will you get from the output that you didn't get before? And will the results be user-friendly to everyone?
James, are you able to answer that one, please?
Yes, certainly. I think, first of all, to be very clear, this isn't a replacement system. This is a brand new system. We currently don't have a performance management system across the council. There was one actually before I joined the council, so you're going back probably 10 years. Up until now, we have not had a corporate system to use. So everything has been done through using spreadsheets and Word documents, which is inefficient, much more difficult to manage, and also makes it much harder to distribute information in an efficient way. So one of the main things the system will allow us to do is to distribute that information in an efficient way. So it will be available to people at all levels of the council, within services, to elected members, to senior management. And certainly with the intention is it will be available, it will be user friendly to everyone, and there will be training available and provided and consultation about how the system will be best implemented and used. We're in the very early stages of doing that on a corporate level. The system is just being finalised in terms of specification now, and will be sort of rolled out across the coming year, with the intention that information will be available on a much more accessible and live basis to everyone who wants it. And the main impact really will be the sheer accessibility of that system.
Thanks, James. Councillor Hearn. Councillor Barrett, am I right in thinking you have a second and third question?
Would you be glad to hear that one of them has already been asked, but I do have a second question, please. Just looking at page 44 on tariff scores, could you just have a brief explanation of what tariff scores are, because I've forgotten? Thank you.
David, please.
Apologies, took me too long to find the mute button there. Yeah, absolutely. So tariff score points are a notional number of points which are awarded to each individual course within the CQF framework, depending upon the number of units that are within that course and the level that that course is sat at. And broadly, the higher the level and the more involvement that's required for a course, the more tariff points that they get. And it's an attempt to actually measure the totality of educational attainment in a way that's meaningful across a variety of different courses and curricular offers.
Thank you, David. Satisfied, Councillor Barrett?
Thank you.
Thank you. I think by my calculations, we're going to have Councillor Kigali, Councillor Forbes again, Councillor Hearn, Councillor Reid, and then Councillor Hearn again, and I think we'll call it a day at that. That's okay. So, Councillor Kigali, please.
On page 45, there's some obviously quite good-looking numbers about the percentage of school leavers going on to positive destinations. I was wondering whether there's any difference depending on where the school is. Obviously, schools in Perth, there's going to be quite a lot of difference in terms of job opportunities in that catchment area compared to some of the more rural communities. Is there a significant difference in the number of people moving on to positive destinations?
David McCluskey again, please.
So we work very closely with all our schools and with our colleagues in the DYW Regional Board and a number of varied partners to maximise the employment opportunities for all young people leaving across all of our schools in Perth and Kinross. And as you can see, we're successful in that across the piece. There are slight differences between some of our schools at various times, but you know those are not major year on year. Because you know it's the job of every school to maximise the positive destinations, participation and opportunities for all young people. So while there can be variation, it's not hugely significant, and we work very hard to actually minimise that entirely.
Thanks, David. I have missed out Councillor Shire's second question as well, so we'll just if that's okay. Councillor Forbes, in the meantime, please.
Thanks, Convener. I was pleased to see a drop in the reported instance of violence in schools. And a couple of questions: are we confident that staff are still reporting them? And if we are, and what does ECS attribute the drop in incidents to?
There's much discussion, Councillor Forbes, as you would appreciate, across the service in relation to any of the information that we receive about incidences of violence and aggression in our schools, and they are reported on assiduously, particularly through the GNCT, where management site meets with teachers. There will be differently held views as to whether there is over or under reporting of incidences, but we do encourage appropriate reporting, and that is something that we're absolutely clear about, that we encourage all staff who feel that they have experienced an incident of violence or aggression within the school to report that and deal with that through the appropriate means. What we have seen is a decline. Now, some of that may be attributable to the fact that actually for significant periods of time over the past while, schools may not have been physically happening in building. That may be a contributing factor. And it may, of course, be down to the fact that the work that we've been undertaking to help support staff deal and manage with incidences of behaviour, which are always going to occur in schools, are proving to be more effective. So it could be a combination of different factors at play there.
Thanks again, Sheena. Councillor Hearn.
Thank you very much. My last two questions, this one is on the performance indicators, and this is on page 47, which is under health and wellbeing and the uptake of school meals. Just like clarity on the numbers there, whether the figures that are shown are the uptake of the meals, so are those the meals that have been eaten, or are those the meals that have been produced to be eaten? And also, it says there that the secondary uptake is recovering more gradually than primary due to pupils looking for freedom from the school environment at lunch break. And if, as is indicated there, the targets moving forward is an annual improvement and we don't get that annual improvement, will there need to be a look at the way, especially within secondary schools, that we actually present school meals to pupils? And certainly, I think that the upper years within the secondary school. Thank you.
Councillor Ahern, the issue in relation to choice that is exercised in secondary schools is something that has been quite marked since we have returned from 2 periods of extended lockdown. And we have further information from a national survey that was undertaken by Professor John McKendrick and his team that invited all secondary school pupils across all of Scotland to participate into a survey about their views around school meals, why they may take them, may not, what they think could be improved. And really helpfully, we've got quite detailed feedback in relation to, I think, almost all of our secondary schools. So a significant piece of information for us to look at about preferences, choices, and what would encourage young people to participate and to take a school meal. And one of the key things is that they, if you like, the day of the dining hall as the only place to go and have your meal at school is really something that our young people are telling us is not their preference, and they have a stronger preference for smaller eateries and more eating on the go and, you know, in different locations. And so we've shared all of that information with our colleagues in Tayside Contracts, and that is a key feature of the ongoing discussions that we have about how to improve the whole meal service and, importantly, improve meal uptake in that regard. So that will be a longer term piece of work, but it will be something that, for example, if we're looking at any refurbishments or new builds, we would certainly want to be taking into consideration how we might look differently at what that kind of offer might be. In relation to your specific question about the data that's in the report, then I think Greg Boland would be better placed than me to answer that question. Thank you.
Bailey Ahern, yes, the figures that are reported within the BMIP are just the meals that are provided over the financial year. What might be helpful with agreement with the committee is for future reporting of this, we can break it down into more detail of the total population within our schools, probably entitled to free school meals and potential paid uptake, and report that so we can see probably more detailed analysis of the meal uptake, and as we move forward, hopefully we see an improvement in the current uptake levels. Thanks.
That would be very useful, because just having the one figure of 1.2 million meals is really not very helpful, but a good breakdown will be useful in the future. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Bailey Hearn, should really say. If I can just add very briefly, I think your point about the dining room environment is well made, which the executive director has referred to as well, and it's certainly something that we as a group are aware of and want to do some work on. Points are well made. Thank you. Councillor Reid, please, and then Councillor Shires, and then I think you have one more. Bailey Hearn. Councillor Reid, please.
Thank you, convener. It's just to go back to a point that Councillor Forbes made, and I just want some clarity. If a Perth-based or Perthshire-based teacher is, for example, teaching a student in Dundee, let's say Latin, I assume that this would also involve the assessment of that student, and that in itself can be incredibly time-consuming. Is there a mechanism for cross-boundary funding in these situations, or are we too early on in the process?
Councillor Reid, in terms of the virtual campus offer, then a teacher is required to provide the relevant materials, the relevant support, the relevant assessments in relation to the numbers of young people that they have in their particular courses. And so there's not a quid pro quo arrangement across different boundaries, because the delivery is done virtually, and the assessment would be undertaken as if those young people were in a class in front of them. Numbers would of course be managed to be appropriate. Not all of the teaching would necessarily take the format of live teaching, but a significant part of a particular course may well take that format, so that there's not an ability to sort of divvy up and work out a pounds and pence allocation in terms of assessment or teacher input, but it's about the offer of a course in its entirety and making sure that that's manageable within each individual teacher's workload. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheena. I appreciate that, but I suppose we're now at a very early stage in this, and this might grow into something which is quite massive, and we might be teaching children from all over Scotland, and vice versa. So it's maybe something we need to think about.
In terms of the teaching arrangements across the Tayside Regional Improvement Collaborative, they're very carefully managed. So it's not a free-for-all. It's not open to absolutely everybody and have unmanageable numbers that are available in that. And all of it is planned and managed and supported appropriately, Councillor Reid. So it wouldn't grow to be unmanageable and unworkable for any one individual member of staff, whether they were an employee of Dundee, of Angus, or indeed of Perth and Kinross.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Reid. My apologies for being slightly taken aback by your choice of subject there, but nonetheless an important and serious question. Thank you. Councillor Shires.
Thank you, convener. My question's on the priorities for 2022-23 on page 28, and it's about that really important group of the care experience children and young people. That this council's got a pretty good and proud record of keeping front and centre of what we do, and it refers to providing tutoring and mentoring opportunities to care experienced children. I wondered if we could have a bit more detail around that, and will that be operated in partnership with PCAVs via the hub that's provided? Thank you.
Hazel, I think, please.
There we go now. Yes, that certainly is an issue that we've been very concerned about, and we have funding to support tutoring for care experienced children. We also have introduced mentoring within the schools with some of the funding that we've been awarded to do that. So we have a number of care experienced young people who have taken advantage not only of the mentoring service within the schools. There's 3 of our schools are piloting that approach, but we also have volunteer tutors available to all care experienced children who require that support. And that is something that we are hoping to see grow over time.
If I may, convener, would that be something that we could maybe have further information on at a future committee?
Sure we can, Councillor Chair. Thank you, Hazel. And the last question, Councillor Hearn again, Bailey Hearn again.
Thank you very much. My question is on the indicators on page 49 and 50. And you won't be surprised that the last one is on criminal justice, which I have an interest in being chair of the Community Justice Partnership. It's actually the change in the indicators that we're seeing. There's quite a few of them were deleted and replaced with new ones. And I just wondered whether that was a national change or a local change. But in particular, the last two, which is the prisoners receiving social work induction within 5 days of allocation. And then the last one, which is more of a concern, is the statutory case closures signed off within 5 working days of release. That is a statutory requirement for them to be signed off within 5 days. And the figures, as you can see in there, that were quite low. But I know for a fact there are a number of reasons as to why that happens, whether it's down to inability to get to the office or to get to meet the social worker or a number of other reasons. But I just wondered why those have been taken out. And we're not, certainly on community justice where we have an interest in it, we're not going to see that now. So are these national or these local changes?
Thank you, Bailey Hearn. I don't know whether James is able to answer some of these questions. I feel one or two of them might be because it's not absolutely within the remit of this committee, but I might be wrong in that. But James, I don't know if you can answer it, please, maybe.
I certainly can't. I can't fully answer, but what I can say, as far as I'm aware, these are local changes, and they reflect the ongoing priority of the service in its self-monitoring. But I'm sure they would welcome any feedback in terms of what information would be useful in terms of scrutiny and understanding the service. And just because information is removed from the BMIP, there's no reason why it can't be provided through other means.
Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure whether you'd be able to give an answer there. It's partly because criminal justice and community justice has come under ECS because of the merger of the social work departments to come under the one direction. But I think it would be, I certainly would be very interested in getting the reasons why, whether it comes back to this committee or whether it comes back as a specific response to the Community Justice Partnership. I'm not bothered either way as long as we can get a response.
Thank you, Bailey Hearn. We'll maybe have a conversation offline. That's acceptable. Thank you very much. I think that's we've had a fair bash at that, so I think I will now move the report. If that's okay with everybody. This report's a good report. There's no room for complacency, however, and definitely room for improvement. Councillor Forbes is right. Too many of our classroom staff still suffer from physical and verbal abuse. Too many of our young learners are still being bullied. We will review our anti-bullying strategy. The good news, though, is that we do deliver education and children's services really well in Perth and Kinross. Plenty of examples of that in this report. Scottish Government-related COVID support funding, along with Pupil Equity Fund, I suspect, has had a positive effect on literacy and numeracy outcomes, particularly in broad general education, and the expansion of early years childcare has meant the continued delivery of high quality and accessible early learning childcare for nearly 3,000 children across Perth and Kinross. And there are many other examples of dedicated professionals delivering for our young people in this report. We owe our thanks to them all, Tayside Contracts colleagues included, as we continue to deal with COVID and as we endeavour to recover from it. Thank you all of you again. I'm delighted to move this report, and if I can ask Councillor Carr to second it.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Catt. We'll move to comments and we start with Councillor McEwen, then Councillor Barrett, and Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Convener. I just want to take this opportunity to actually thank all Education and Children's Service staff, both here at the Council and on our school campuses. I have two girls, both at high school within the region, and the flexibility, the passion and the dedication of our teaching staff has been absolutely amazing over the last couple of years. They've faced an adversity that no training or degree ever would put at somebody's feet and expect them to take, and they have done extremely well. And I think I'm sure we get the congratulations of not just everybody in this committee, but all the council members that are currently elected.
Very well put, Councillor McEwen. Councillor Barrett, please.
I agree with absolutely everything Councillor McEwen said, and would like to add my thanks for the flexibility and creativity that's been demonstrated over the last few years, for all that you've achieved in your continuing work as you tackle the recovery from COVID. I'd also like to thank all the officers who've been available to answer our questions today, and just wish everybody all the very best for restorative and restful holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Also well said. Councillor Shire.
Thank you, Convener. Can I say ditto to all of that? I think it's been a great privilege to sit in meetings such as the JNCT over the last couple of years and hear, the interaction between the teachers, representatives, and our senior officers. And I think compassion probably has been, evident at every turn. And the even when energy was starting to get depleted over the last 2 years, they just kept going. There's also a holiday somewhere around the corner for everybody, and that kept them all going. So I think, yeah, we do absolutely pay tribute to all of the staff across the schools, and also the social work staff and all the other people that often go unseen. But we know how hard they all work. I think looking at the BMIP and the improvement plan, and you had my sympathies trying to trot all that out, Convener, having done it myself. I think it's really important that we never get complacent. Things like the virtual campus will only become a success if we keep driving them forward, and invest the time, energy and resource in making them actually happen. We know that we are ambitious for our young people, and that includes course choices, but also, as David McCluskey outlined, the other opportunities that help young people into positive destinations for the future. So whilst, yes, we do pay tribute to all those people that are involved in all of this, we want to share that ambition to keep driving things forward, and to use the data to be able to draw comparison with our comparator authorities to make sure that we continue to strive to be the best that we can be in Perth and Kinross, and not see any form of slippage at all as a result of perhaps the challenges that we have all been through. So it's thank you very much, but it's also let's just keep striving to do better in the future. Thank you.
Yep, spot on, Councillor Shires. Thank you for those comments. Councillor Hearn, please. Bailey Hearn. Chris.
Thank you very much, Convener. Yeah, thank you for indulgence and allowing me so many questions today. And I also would like to echo what has been said in the comments. I'm glad I'm on this committee. I wasn't on it in the last administration. It's an important committee. It's an important group of people we have in the council, and I applaud all of them. And I include all those in the criminal justice side of it as well, of which I have a huge interest. As part of this committee, we get to sit on other small groups, and in the last 2 weeks, I've sat on 3 lots of interviews, and never have I heard or listened to such an enthusiastic bunch of people that are sitting there with the enthusiasm they've got for teaching children across our area, and the enthusiasm that they come along with, and the ideas that they have is tremendous. And I think we have a really good support of teachers within our area. So I applaud every single one of them and every single one of the people that are here who support them in the council. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bailey Hearn, for the kind words. I've certainly sat in the previous 5 years in many interviews with Councillor Shires and Councillor McDade, actually, and you're absolutely spot on with what I've said. They are an incredible bunch of professionals, that is for sure. Thank you. If there are no amendments, can we agree the report? Thank you. We'll move on. There's a number of items, but I'm hoping, and I cross my fingers and touch wood as I say this, that we might get through them reasonably quickly. So we'll horse on rather than have any kind of break. I think that's okay with everybody. Paper number 5 is about non-council members, and we're just noting the decision of council that current non-council members are reappointed, although there will be an election process for the appointment of non-council members to be arranged as soon as is practically possible. And I think if the committee is content to note that. Thank you. Item 6 is the appointment of members to the Executive Subcommittee of Learning and Families. We note that the council meeting of the 22nd of June, it was agreed that the membership of all executive subcommittees will be increased from 5 to 7. Nominations to the Executive Subcommittee of the Learning and Families past the committee services, but again, if we're content to do that line, that's what we'll do. Thank you. And the appointment of members to Education Appeal Committee, which I think legally has to be 11, and we have that's the next one, so ignore that. But we have Bailey Hearn, Councillor Liz Barrett, Councillor Neil Freshwater, Councillor Noah Galley, Councillor Brian Leishman, Councillor Ian McPherson, Councillor Ian Massey, Councillor Caroline Shires, and Councillor Colin Stewart, who I think have all done the training, and if anybody on the committee hasn't done their training, encourage them to do so, and if we can note that would be it. And item number 11 is the appointment of members of Perth and Kinross Educational Trust, which is to be 11 elected members, but again, we'll take that offline if that's acceptable to everybody. And item number 9 is the appointment of members to the Joint Negotiating Committee for Teaching Staff, and we're asked to note that is Councillor Stephen Carr, Councillor Caroline Shires, Councillor John Ray. Note that as well. Thank you. There's one last item which is not necessarily on the agenda, but it's impossible to let it pass, and that is that our clerk, Linda Brown, sitting next to me here, it will be our last Education Committee, I can put it like that. And I know you don't want us, Linda, and I totally understand that, but it would be very remiss if we were to let it pass after 44 years of service. And I know in particular you will miss the placing request appeals, because that's the favourite part of your job, or something like that. So on behalf of the committee, I would just like to wish you all the very best.
Thanks, everybody. I'm not great at public speaking, so I'd just like to thank everybody, wish you all the best for the future, and really looking forward to my retirement. Thank you.
You will be missed, Linda. I think that's us, so thanks very much everybody for attending, and thank you for that healthy amount of questions on paper 4. Thank you.